What do you think of $100 plus games? So there's a couple of things that are really interesting about this. Back in the day, a Super Nintendo game was $69.95. That's how much Secret of Mana cost when it first came out. Let's go pull this up. Inflation calculator. And what year did Secret of Mana launch? August 6, 1993. And we're going to go from August 1993, and we'll go to April of 2024. And we're going to say $69.95. If you were to buy that Super Nintendo game today, in today's currency, it'd be $151.47. That would be the cost. Dramatically higher, right? But the reason they were so expensive back then is because of physical distribution. That's the reason. We don't have that anymore. You don't have to make a cartridge. You don't have to put it on a store shelf. You don't have to physically ship it. You don't have to do any of that. We have digital distribution. It costs nothing. I have sold tens of thousands of copies of Heartbound, and it has cost us nothing. So when we're looking at this versus that, it doesn't make sense. We can't even make a comparison there. Steam still takes 30%? No, they don't. When I make a Steam key, and that key is for a $10 game, and then I sell that on Humble Bundle, what is the percentage that Steam takes from me? 0%. Steam only takes 30% of the sales you have on the Steam platform. Only on the Steam platform. Further than that, if you have trading cards for your game, which you always do, you make those yourself. Very easy. Whenever one of those sells between one player and another, there's a community market fee. Steam gives the developer the community market fee. That ain't 30%. That's a lot less than 30%. Depending on how you strategize your sales, it's dramatically less than 30%. And Steam does not charge you for the distribution of your patches or the game itself outside of that 30% cut. Isn't that literally pennies, though? No, no. Very funny. So the way that I look at this right now is this doesn't make sense. We live in a time of digital distribution, and the way that I see sales of games is like this. If it's $1, people see it as shovelware. If it's $3, they see it as an arcade game. $5 is a premium arcade game. $10 is an indie game. $20 is a premium indie game. Anything anywhere from 10 to 20 is a premium indie game. $40 is a day game. $60 is AAA. And anything 70 or above is a scam. That's the general way that people feel about games that I've seen so far. Like, this is the limit. Anything above that, and people hate you. Whether they feel it's worth it or not. The problem is this. The ones saying this, unfortunately, don't matter. As awful as that is. Because there's multitudes of people that are just buying the games anyway. An insane number of people that don't take any part in online discourse, don't take any part in talking about $70 game, don't take any part in any of this, and just buy the $100+ copies every time. You will find very quickly that the double down versions of games, instead of the $70 version, the $110 version, you'll find that these ones sell more than these ones. Almost every time. And if it is a $70 game, it'll likely have MTX in it that will end up making it sell more than this every time. The reason that the business model works this way is because people spend money on it. This is normal business for the games industry, and I reject the shit out of it. Why do you think our game is $10 and it won't have a sequel, and it won't have a prequel, and it won't have chapters, and it won't have DLC, and it won't have microtransactions? That's why it's $10, because I hate this business model. I hate it. I think it's shit, and I don't want to perpetuate it, even if it would make me more money, because it's not good for the industry. So I can't convince people to stop buying games like this. I can just stop selling games in that way and succeed in spite of that. So are sequels bad? No, but if you're making episodic content, it's not good for the game a lot of the times. I'll give you an example. Let's say that your base game is $10 and you release a DLC for $5, and then you release a DLC for $5 and you release a DLC for $5. As a player, you bought it for $10 and a new DLC comes out 3 months later. It's only $5, so you buy it, and then another one 3 months later. Well, it's only $5, so you bought it, and then another one 3 months later. It's only $5, so you buy it, right? You just keep doing this. Now, let's say that you tell your friend, hey man, this game is really good. And your friend's like, oh, how much was it? And you're like, oh, it's $10. And your friend goes to look at it and he goes, that's not $10. Now you get a $25 game. So new players are de-incentivized from jumping in. But old players feel like they got good value and they didn't pay that much, except they're both paying the same amount. It's a marketing strategy that preys on your inability to do math or inability to assign value over time. That's the issue. So, like, not a fan of it. Really not a fan of it. If I'm going to release new content for Heartbound, I'm just going to patch it into the game, like I always have. No reason not to. What are your thoughts on expansions then for games? I only like expansions for live service games a lot of the times. Like, I really only like expansions for live service games. I don't like expansions a lot of the time outside of that. I think they're kind of gross. Like, if you're doing a single player game, the only time I'd say an expansion makes sense is like if you're adding another campaign to it. Live service game does make sense for expansions because that ends up being kind of a good deal. But yeah, it's pretty rare that single player games get expansions that make sense. It's pretty rare. What about the infamous Oblivion Horse Armor DLC? I think it's ass. Like, obviously. Not a fan of that. Risk of Rain? Risk of Rain wasn't an expansion. That was a totally new game. We had Risk of Rain to Risk of Rain 2. It's a completely different video game. That's fine. What about Vampire Survivors? I actually don't like Vampire Survivors. I didn't like the fact that they went from a $3 game and then sold millions of copies and then made it $5. Like, why? Why did they do that? There's no reason for that shit. Makes no sense. Bro gets mad from $2 game to $5 game? Yeah. Do you know why? Because there's no reason for that. If you have a $3 game and it sells millions of copies, and then you change that price to $5, you have a small team that has more money than they'll ever need, and you've changed the price to $5 after it becomes popular. If I took my game that was $10 and I made it $12 after it became popular, would you feel good about that? You'd hate it. Just like I do. It's like, because there's no reason for it. The only time that we ever have to change prices is when there's dramatic shifts in the valuation of individual currencies. Currency exchange rates is the only time we have to raise prices, because sometimes currency exchange rates go crazy, which is exactly what happened with Argentina, right? Like, that sucks. There's nothing we can do about it at that point. Where, like, suddenly, like, a currency just inflates to and is not worth anything anymore. Like, we have to take action. There's nothing we can do about it. That's the only time that I think that's appropriate. That's the only time, and it's a global finance issue. Yeah, global finances go wacky. Bingo. Price your game in line with the gold standard? No, that's not really how that works. The way that you have to price your game, no matter what, man, is based on people's expendable income. You're making an entertainment piece. That's what that is. It's an entertainment piece. People don't need to buy your game. They don't have to. So you have to price it based on people's expendable income inside of that area. Disposable income is what you're targeting. What about board member bonuses? Gross. Yeah, it's gross. No, you don't have to buy it. I price ours based on a Big Mac. It's about a Big Mac and a half. Yeah. You want people to buy... What is this? You want people to buy your product? Make it affordable. Bingo. Yes. Make it affordable for each region, too. Always make it affordable for each region. You have to think about what the economics are of each region that you're selling the game in. And you have to think about specifically how much disposable income people in that region have. Yeah, regional pricing. Always regional pricing. Always. And then you price it appropriately based on that. It's very easy. Just takes a little bit of effort, right? Are you in favor of microtransactions in the game if the game is free? I'm in favor of microtransactions if they are cosmetic in nature and nothing else. There's no reason for it. There's no reason for anything else. Cosmetics only. How do you make the art for your game? Shay makes all the art and animation for Hardbound. I do the technical art, which is particle effects, shadows, lighting, stuff like that. Sony priced Helldivers to 0 in some reason? No, they didn't price Helldivers to 0 in some regions. They made it unpurchasable in some regions. Those are two very different things. Yeah. No, 0 would be free. Lol, same thing? No, 0 would be free. They turned it... What they did was they took a selling video game and instead applied a 5-finger discount to everybody who wanted to go the extra mile. It's probably the greatest advertisement to piracy I've ever seen in my life. Insane to watch.